if you do not take advantage of opportunities, and it really is quite unusual to get a bargain from an English lady. So last night, I cabled Mr. Eisman, and I told Mr. Eisman that he does not seem to know how much it costs to get educated by traveling, and I said I really would have to have $10,000. And I said I hoped I would not have to borrow the money from some strange English gentleman, even if he might be very good-looking. So I really could not sleep all night because of all my worrying, because if I do not get the money to buy the diamond tiara, it may be quite a hard thing to get back $100 from an English lady. So now I must really get dressed, as Major Falcon is going to take Dorothy and I to look at all the sights in London. But I really think if I do not get the diamond tiara, my whole trip to London will be quite a failure. April 18th. Yesterday was quite a night and day. Major Falcon came to take Dorothy and I to see all the sights in London. So I thought it would be delightful if we had another gentleman, and I made Major Falcon call up Sir Francis Beekman. I had a cable from Mr. Eisman, which told me he could not send me $10,000, but he would send me $1,000, which really would not be a drop in the bucket for the diamond tiara. So Sir Francis Beekman said that he could not come, but I teased him and teased him over the telephone, so he finally said he would come. So Major Falcon drives his own car, so Dorothy sat with him, and I sat with Sir Francis Beekman, but I told him that I was not going to call him Sir Francis Beekman, but that I was really going to call him Piggy. In London, they make a very, very great fuss over nothing at all. London is really nothing at all. For instance, they make a great fuss over a tower that really is not even tall as the Hickox Building in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it would only make a chimney on one of our towers in New York. So Sir Francis Beekman wanted us to get out and look at the tower, because he said that quite a famous queen had her head cut off there one morning, and Dorothy said, "What a fool she was to get up that morning." And that is really the only sensible thing that Dorothy has said in London. So we did not bother to get out. So we did not go to any more sights, because they really have delicious champagne cocktails at a very, very smart new restaurant called the Café de Paris, that you could not get in New York for neither love or money, and I told Piggy that when you are traveling, you really ought to take advantages of what you cannot do at home. So while Dorothy and I were in the Café de Paris powdering our nose in the ladies' dressing room, we met an American girl who Dorothy knew in the Foleys, but now she is living in London. So she told us all about London. So it seems the gentlemen in London have quite a quaint custom of not giving a girl many presents. The English girls really seem to be satisfied with a gold cigarette holder, or else what they call a bangle, which means a bracelet in English, which is only gold and does not have any stones in it, which American girls would really give to their maid. So she said you could tell what English gentlemen were like when you realized that not even English ladies could get anything out of them. So she said Sir Francis Beekman was really famous all over London for not spending so much money as most English gentlemen. So then Dorothy and I said goodbye to Dorothy's girlfriend, and Dorothy said, "Let's tell our two boyfriends that we have a headache and go back to the Ritz, where men are Americans." Because Dorothy said that the society of a gentleman like Sir Francis Beekman was too great a price to pay for a couple rounds of champagne cocktails. But I told Dorothy that I always believe that there is nothing like trying, and I think it would be nice for an American girl like I to educate an English gentleman like Piggy, as I call Sir Francis Beekman. So then we went back to the table, and I almost have to admit that Dorothy is in the right about Piggy, because he really likes to talk quite a lot, and he is always talking about a friend of his who was quite a famous king in London called King Edward. So Piggy said he would never forget the jokes King Edward was always saying. And he would never forget one time they were all on a yacht and they were all sitting at a table. And King Edward got up and said, "I don't care what you gentlemen do. I'm going to smoke a cigar." So then Piggy laughed very loud. So of course I laughed very loud, and I told Piggy he was wonderful the way he could tell jokes. I mean, you can always tell when to laugh because Piggy always laughs first. So in the afternoon, a lot of lady friends of Mrs. Weeks heard about me buying the diamond tiara and called us up and asked us to their house to tea. So Dorothy and I went, and we took a gentleman Dorothy met in the lobby, who is very good looking, but he is only an English ballroom dancer in a cafe when he has a job. So we went to tea to a lady's house called Lady Elmsworth, and what she has to sell we Americans seems to be a picture of her father painted in oil paint, who she said was a whistler. But I told her my own father was a whistler and used to whistle all of the time, and I did not even have a picture of him. But every time he used to go to Little Rock, I asked him to go to the photographer's, but he did not go. So then we met a lady called Lady Chiselby that wanted us to go to her house to tea, but we told her that we really did not want to buy anything. But she said that she did not have anything to sell, but she wanted to borrow £5. So we did not go, and I am really glad that Mr. Eisman did not come to London, as all the English ladies would ask him to tea, and he would have a whole shipload of shell flowers and dogs and antique pictures that do nobody any good. So last night, Piggy and I, and Dorothy and the dancer, who is called Gerald, went to the Kit Kat Club, as Gerald had nothing better to do because he is out of a job. So Dorothy and I had quite a little quarrel because I told Dorothy that she was wasting quite a lot of time going with any gentleman who is out of a job. But Dorothy is always getting to really like somebody, and she will never learn how to act. I mean, I always seem to think that when a girl really enjoys being with a gentleman, it puts her to quite a disadvantage, and no real good can come of it. Well, tonight is going to be quite a night, because Major Falcon is going to take Dorothy and I to a dance at a lady's house tonight to meet the Prince of Wales. And now I must get ready to see Piggy, because he and I seem to be getting to be quite good friends, even if he has not sent me any flowers yet. April 19th. Last night we really met the Prince of Wales. I mean, Major Falcon called for Dorothy and I at 11 and took us to a lady's house where the lady was having a party. The Prince of Wales is really wonderful. I mean, even if he was not a prince, he would be wonderful. Because even if he was not a prince, he would be able to make his living playing the ukulele, if he had a little more practice. So the lady came up to me and told me that the Prince of Wales would like to meet me. So she gave us an introduction to one another, and I was very thrilled when he asked me for a dance. So I decided I would write down every word he said to me in my diary, so I could always go back and read it over and over when I am really old. So then we started to dance, and I asked him if he was still able to be fond of horses. And he said he was. So after our dance was all over, he asked Dorothy for a dance, but Dorothy will never learn how to act in front of a prince, because she handed me her fan, and she said, "Hold this while I slip a new page into English history," right in front of the Prince of Wales. So I was very worried while Dorothy was dancing with the Prince of Wales, because she talked to the Prince of Wales all the time, and when she got through, the Prince of Wales wrote some of the slang words she is always saying on his cuff. So if he tells the queen someday to be a good elk, or some other slang word Dorothy is always saying, the queen will really blame me for bringing such a girl into English society. So when Dorothy came back, we had quite a little quarrel, because Dorothy said that since I met the Prince of Wales, I was becoming too English. But really, I mean to say, I often remember Papa back in Arkansas, and he often used to say that his grandpa came from a place in England called Australia. So really, I mean to say, it is no wonder that the English seems to come out of me sometimes, because if a girl seems to have an English accent, I really think it is quite jolly. April 20th. Yesterday afternoon, I really thought I ought to begin to educate Piggy how to act with a girl like American gentlemen act with a girl. So I asked him to come up to have tea in our sitting room in the hotel because I had quite a headache. I mean, I really look quite cute in my pink negligee. So I sent out a bellhop friend of Dorothy and I, who is quite a nice boy, who is called Harry, and who we talk to quite a lot. So I gave Harry 10 pounds of English money, and I told him to go to the most expensive florist and to buy some very, very expensive orchids for 10 pounds, and to bring them to our sitting room at 15 minutes past 5, and not to say a word, but to say they were for me. So Piggy came to tea, and we were having tea when Harry came in, and he did not say a word, but he gave me a quite large box, and he said it was for me. So I opened the box, and sure enough, they were a dozen very, very beautiful orchids. So I looked for a card, but of course there was no card. So I grabbed Piggy, and I said I would have to give him quite a large hug, because it must have been him. But he said it was not him. But I said it must be him, because I said that there was only one gentleman in London who was so sweet and generous and had such a large heart to send a girl 12 orchids like him. So he still said it was not him. But I said I knew it was him, because there was not a gentleman in London so really marvelous and so wonderful, and such a marvelous gentleman to send a girl 12 orchids every day as him. So I really had to apologize for giving him such a large hug. But I told him I was so full of impulses that when I knew he was going to send me 12 orchids every day, I became so impulsive I could not help it. So then Dorothy and Gerald came in, and I told them all about what a wonderful gentleman Piggy turned out to be. And I told them when a gentleman sent a girl 12 orchids every day, he really reminded me of a prince. So Piggy blushed quite a lot, and he was really very, very pleased, and he did not say any more that it was not him. So then I started to make a fuss over him, and I told him he would have to look out, because he was really so good-looking, and I was so full of impulses that I might even lose my mind sometime and give him a kiss. So Piggy really felt very, very good to be such a good-looking gentleman, so he could not help blushing all the time, and he could not help grinning all the time from one ear to another. So he asked us all to dinner, and then he and Gerald went to change their clothes for dinner. So Dorothy and I had quite a little quarrel after they went, because Dorothy asked me which one of the Jesse James brothers was my father. But I told her I was not so unrefined that I would waste my time with any gentleman who was only a ballroom dancer when he had a job. So Dorothy said Gerald was a gentleman because he wrote her a note and it had a crest. So I told her to try and eat it. So then we had to get dressed. So this morning, Harry, the boyfriend of ours who is the bellhop, waked me up at 10 o'clock because he had a box of 12 orchids from Piggy. So by the time Piggy pays for a few dozen orchids, the diamond tiara will really seem like quite a bargain. because I always think that spending money is only just a habit, and if you get a gentleman started on buying 12 orchids at a time, he really gets very good habits. April 21st. Well, yesterday afternoon I took Piggy shopping on a street called Bond Street. So I took him to a jewelry store because I told him I had to have a silver picture frame, because I had to have a picture of him to go in it. Because I told Piggy that when a girl gets to know such a good-looking gentleman as him, she really wants to have a picture of him on her dressing table where she can look at it a lot. So Piggy became quite intrigued. So we looked at all the silver picture frames. But then I told him that I really did not think a silver picture frame was good enough for a picture of him, because I forgot they had gold picture frames until I saw them. So then we started to look at the gold picture frames. So then it came out that his picture was taken in his uniform. So I said he must be so good looking in his uniform that I really did not think even the gold picture frames were good enough. But they did not have any platinum picture frames, so we had to buy the best one we could. So then I asked him if he could put on his uniform tomorrow, because I would love to see him in his uniform, and we could go to tea at Mrs. Weeks. So he really became very pleased, because he grinned quite a lot, and he said that he would. So then I said that poor little I would really look like nothing at all to be going out with him in his gorgeous uniform. So then we started to look at some bracelets, but a lady friend of his who is quite friendly with his wife, who is in their country house in the country, came into the store. So Piggy became quite nervous to be caught in a jewelry store where he has not been for years and years, so we had to go out. This morning Gerald called up Dorothy, and he said the day after tomorrow they are having a theatrical garden party to sell things to people for charity. So he asked if Dorothy and I would be one of the ones who sell things to people for charity. So we said we would. So now I must telephone Mrs. Weeks and say I will bring Sir Francis Beekman to tea tomorrow, and I hope it all comes out all right. But I really wish Piggy would not tell so many stories. I mean, I do not mind a gentleman when he tells a great many stories if they are new. But a gentleman who tells a great many stories, and they are all the same stories, is quite enervating. I mean, London is really so uneducational that all I seem to be learning is some of Piggy's stories, and I even want to forget them. So I am really becoming jolly well fed up with London. April 22nd. Yesterday Piggy came in his uniform, but he was really quite upset because he had a letter. I mean, his wife is coming to London because she always comes to London every year to get her old clothes made over, as she has a girl who does it very, very cheap. So she is going to stay with the lady who saw us in the jewelry store, because it always saves money to stay with a friend. So I wanted to cheer Piggy up, so I told him that I did not think the lady saw us, and if she did see us, she really could not believe her eyes to see him in a jewelry store. But I did not tell him that I think that Dorothy and I had better go to Paris soon, because after all, Piggy's society is beginning to tell on a girl's nerves. But I really made Piggy feel quite good about his uniform, because I told him I only felt fit to be with him in a diamond tiara. So then I told him that, even if his wife was in London, we could still be friends, because I could not help but admire him even if his wife was in London, and I told him I really thought a thing like that was nearly always the result of fate. So then we went to tea at Mrs. Weeks. So Piggy arranged with Mrs. Weeks to pay her for the diamond tiara, and she nearly fell dead, but she will keep it a secret because no one would believe it anyway. So now I have the diamond tiara, and I have to admit that everything always turns out for the best. But I promised Piggy that I would always stay in London and we would always be friendly, because Piggy always says that I am the only one who admires him for what he really is. April 25th. Well, we were so busy the last days I did not have time to write in my diary, because now we are on a ship that seems to be quite a small ship to be sailing to Paris, and we will be at Paris this afternoon. Because it does not take nearly so long to come to Paris as it does to come to London. I mean, it seems quite unusual to think that it takes 6 days to come to London and only 1 day to come to Paris. So Dorothy is quite upset because she did not want to come, as she is madly in love with Gerald. And Gerald said that we really ought not to leave London without going to see England while we happen to be here. But I told him that if England was the same kind of a place that London seems to be, I really know too much to bother with such a place. I mean, we had quite a little quarrel because Gerald showed up at the station with a bangle for Dorothy. So I told Dorothy she was well rid of such a person. So Dorothy had to come with me because Mr. Eisman is paying her expenses because he wants Dorothy to be my chaperone. So the last thing in London was the garden party. I sold quite a lot of red balloons, and I sold a red balloon to Harry Lauder, the famous Scotch gentleman who is the famous Scotch tenor, for £20. So Dorothy said I did not need to buy any ticket to Paris on the boat, because if I could do that, I could walk across the channel. So Piggy does not know that we have gone, but I sent him a letter and told him I would see him sometime again sometime. And I was really glad to get out of our rooms at the Ritz. I mean, 50 or 60 orchids really make a girl think of a funeral. So I cabled Mr. Eisman, and I told him we could not learn anything in London because we knew too much. So if we went to Paris at least, we could learn French, if we made up our mind to it. So I am really very, very intrigued, as I have heard so much about Paris, and I feel that it must be much more educational than London, and I can hardly wait to see the Ritz Hotel in Paris. Chapter 4. Paris is Divine. April 27th. Paris is divine. I mean, Dorothy and I got to Paris yesterday, and it really is divine. Because the French are divine. Because when we are coming off the boat, and we are coming through the customs, it was quite hot, and it seemed to smell quite a lot, and all the French gentlemen in the customs were squealing quite a lot. So I looked around, and I picked out a French gentleman who was really in a very gorgeous uniform, and he seemed to be a very, very important gentleman, and I gave him 20 francs worth of French money, and he was very, very gallant, and he knocked everybody else down and took our bags right through the custom. Because I really think that 20 francs is quite cheap for a gentleman that has got on at least $100 worth of gold braid on his coat alone, to speak nothing of his trousers. I mean, the French gentlemen always seem to be squealing quite a lot, especially taxi drivers when they only get a small-size yellow dime called a 50 centimes for a tip. But the good thing about French gentlemen is that every time a French gentleman starts in to squeal, you can always stop him with 5 francs, no matter who he is. I mean, it is so refreshing to listen to a French gentleman stop squeaking that it would really be quite a bargain even for 10 francs. So we came to the Ritz Hotel, and the Ritz Hotel is divine, because when a girl can sit in a delightful bar and have delicious champagne cocktails and look at all the important French people in Paris, I think it is divine. I mean, when a girl can sit there and look at the Dolly sisters and Pearl White and Maybelle Gillam Corey and Mrs. Nash, it is beyond worlds. Because when a girl looks at Mrs. Nash and realizes what Mrs. Nash has got out of gentlemen, it really makes a girl hold her breath. And when a girl walks around and reads all of the signs with all of the famous historical names, it really makes you hold your breath. Because when Dorothy and I went on a walk, we only walked a few blocks, but in only a few blocks, we read all of the famous historical names, like Cody and Cartier, and I knew we were seeing something educational at last, and our whole trip was not a failure. I mean, I really tried to make Dorothy get educated and have reverence. So when we stood at the corner of a place called the Place Vendôme, if you turn your back on a monument they have in the middle and look up, you can see none other than Cody's sign. So I said to Dorothy, does it not really give you a thrill to realize that that is the historical spot where Mr. Cody makes all the perfume? So then Dorothy said that she supposed Mr. Cody came to Paris, and he smelled Paris, and he realized that something had to be done. So Dorothy will really never have any reference. So then we saw a jewelry store, and we saw some jewelry in the window, and it really seemed to be a very, very great bargain, but the price marks all had francs on them, and Dorothy and I do not seem to be mathematical enough to tell how much francs is in money. So we went in and asked, and it seems it was only $20, and it seems it is not diamonds, but it is a thing called paste, which is the name of a word which means imitations. So Dorothy said paste is the name of the word a girl ought to do to a gentleman that handed her one. I mean, I would really be embarrassed, but the gentleman did not seem to understand Dorothy's English. So it really makes a girl feel depressed to think a girl could not tell that it was nothing but an imitation. I mean, a gentleman could deceive a girl because he could give her a present, and it would only be worth $20. So when Mr. Eisman comes to Paris next week, if he wants to make me a present, I will make him take me along with him, because he really is quite an inveterate bargain hunter at heart. So the gentleman at the jewelry store said that quite a lot of famous girls in Paris had imitations of all their jewelry, and they put the jewelry in the safe, and they really wore the imitations, so they could wear it and have a good time. But I told him I thought that any girl who was a lady would not even think of having such a good time, that she did not remember to hang on to her jewelry. So then we went back to the Ritz and unpacked our trunks, with the aid of a really delightful waiter who brought us up some delicious luncheon, and who is called Leon, and who speaks English almost like an American, and who Dorothy and I talked to quite a lot. So Leon said that we ought not to stay around the Ritz all of the time, but we really ought to see Paris. So Dorothy said she would go down in the lobby and meet some gentleman to show us Paris. So, in a couple of minutes, she called up on the telephone from the lobby, and she said, I have got a French bird down here who is a French title nobleman, who is called a viscount, so come on down. So I said, how did a Frenchman get into the Ritz? So Dorothy said, he came in to get out of the rain, and he has not noticed that it is stopped. So I said, I suppose you have picked up something without taxi fare, as usual. Why did you not get an American gentleman who always have money? So Dorothy said she thought a French gentleman had ought to know Paris better. So I said, he does not even know it is not raining. But I went down. So the Viscount was really delightful after all. So then we rode around, and we saw Paris, and we saw how divine it really is. I mean, the Eiffel Tower is divine, and it is much more educational than the London Tower, because you cannot even see the London Tower if you happen to be 2 blocks away. But when a girl looks at the Eiffel Tower, she really knows she is looking at something, and it would even be very difficult not to notice the Eiffel Tower. So then we went to a place called the Madrid to tea, and it really was divine. I mean, we saw the Dolly sisters, and Pearl White, and Mrs. Corey, and Mrs. Nash all over again. Then we went to dinner, and then we went to Montmartre, and it really was divine, because we saw them all over again. I mean, in Montmartre, they have genuine American jazz bands, and quite a lot of New York people, which we knew, and you really would think you were in New York, and it was divine. So we came back to the Ritz quite late, so Dorothy and I had quite a little quarrel, because Dorothy said that when we were looking at Paris, I asked the French Viscount what was the name of the unknown soldier who was buried under quite a large monument. So I said I really did not mean to ask him, if I did, because what I did mean to ask him was, what was the name of his mother? Because it is always the mother of a dead soldier that I always seem to think about more than the dead soldier that has died. So, the French Viscount is going to call up in the morning, but I am not going to see him again, because French gentlemen are really quite deceiving. I mean, they take you to quite cute places, and they make you feel quite good about yourself, and you really seem to have a delightful time. But when you get home and come to think it all over, all you have got is a fan that only cost 20 francs and a doll that they gave you away for nothing in a restaurant. I mean, a girl has to look out in Paris, or she would have such a good time in Paris that she would not get anywheres. So I really think that American gentlemen are the best after all, because kissing your hand may make you feel very, very good, but a diamond and a sapphire bracelet lasts forever. Besides, I do not think that I ought to go out with any gentleman in Paris, because Mr. Eisman will be here next week, and he told me that the only kind of gentlemen he wants me to go out with are intellectual gentlemen who are good for a girl's brains. So I really do not seem to see many gentlemen around the Ritz who seem to look like they would be good for a girl's brains. So tomorrow we are going to go shopping, and I suppose it would really be too much to expect to find a gentleman who would look to Mr. Eisman like he was good for a girl's brains, and at the same time he would like to take us shopping. April 29th. Yesterday was quite a day. I mean, Dorothy and I were getting ready to go shopping, and the telephone rang, and they said that Lady Frances Beekman was downstairs, and she wanted to come upstairs. So I was really quite surprised. I mean, I did not know what to say, so I said all right. So then I told Dorothy, and then we put our brains together, because it seems that Lady Frances Beekman is the wife of the gentleman called Sir Francis Beekman, who was the admirer of mine in London, who seemed to admire me so much that he asked me if he could make me a present of a diamond tiara. So it seemed as if his wife must have heard about it, and it really seemed as if she must have come clear over from London about it. So there was a very, very loud knock at the door, so we asked her to come in. So Lady Frances Beekman came in, and she is a quite large-sized lady who seems to resemble Bill Hart quite a lot. I mean, Dorothy thinks that Lady Frances Beekman resembles Bill Hart quite a lot, only she really thinks she looks more like Bill Hart's horse. So it seems that she said that if I did not give her back the diamond tiara right away, she would make quite a fuss, and she would ruin my reputation. Because she said that something really must be wrong about the whole thing. Because it seems that Sir Francis Beekman and she have been married for 35 years, and the last present he gave to her was a wedding ring. So Dorothy spoke up and she said, "Lady, you could no more ruin my girlfriend's reputation than you could sink the Jewish fleet." I mean, I was quite proud of Dorothy the way she stood up for my reputation. because I really think that there is nothing so wonderful as two girls when they stand up for each other and help each other a lot. Because no matter how vigorous Lady Frances Beekman seems to be, she had to realize that she could not sink a whole fleet full of ships. So she had to stop talking against my reputation. So then she said she would drag it into the court, and she would say that it was undue influence. So I said to her, "If you wear that hat into a court, we will see if the judge thinks it took an undue influence to make Sir Francis Beekman look at a girl." So then Dorothy spoke up, and Dorothy said, "My girlfriend is right, lady. You have got to be the Queen of England to get away with a hat like that." So Lady Frances Beekman seemed to get quite angry. So then she said she would send for Sir Francis Beekman, where he suddenly went to Scotland to go hunting when he found out that Lady Frances Beekman had found out. So Dorothy said, "Do you mean that you have left Sir Francis Beekman loose with all those spendthrifts down in Scotland?" So Dorothy said she would better look out, or he would get together with the boys some night and simply massacre a halfpenny. I always encourage Dorothy to talk quite a lot when we are talking to unrefined people like Lady Frances Beekman, because Dorothy speaks their own language to unrefined people better than a refined girl like I. So Dorothy said, "You had better not send for Sir Francis Beekman, because if my girlfriend really wanted to turn loose on Sir Francis Beekman, all he would have left would be his title." So then I spoke right up and said yes, that I was an American girl, and we American girls do not care about a title, because we American girls always say that what is good enough for Washington is good enough for us. So Lady Frances Beekman really seemed to get more angry and more angry all of the time. So then she said that if it was necessary, she would tell the judge that Sir Francis Beekman went out of his mind when he gave it to me. So Dorothy said, "Lady, if you go into a court and if the judge gets a good look at you, he will think that Sir Francis Beekman was out of his mind 35 years ago." So then Lady Frances Beekman said she knew what kind of a person she had to deal with, and she would not deal with any such a person because she said it hurt her dignity. So Dorothy said, "Lady, if we hurt your dignity like you hurt our eyesight, I hope for your sake you are a Christian Science." So that seemed to make Lady Frances Beekman angry. So she said she would turn it all over to her solicitor. So when she went out, she tripped over quite a long train which she had on her skirt and nearly fell down. So Dorothy leaned out of the door, and Dorothy called down the hall and said, "Take a tuck in that skirt, Isabel. It's 1925. So I really felt quite depressed, because I felt as if our whole morning was really very unrefined, just because we had to mix with such an unrefined lady as Lady Frances Beekman. April 30th. So sure enough, yesterday morning Lady Frances Beekman's solicitor came. Only he really was not a solicitor, but his name was on a card, and it seems his name is Mons Brossard. And it seems that he is an advocate, because an advocate is a lawyer in the French language. So Dorothy and I were getting dressed, and we were in our negligee as usual, when there was quite a loud knock on the door, and before we could even say "come in," he jumped right into the room. So it seems that he is of French extraction. Lady Frances Beekman's solicitor can really squeal just like a taxi driver. He was squealing quite loud when he jumped into the room, and he kept right on squealing. So Dorothy and I rushed into the parlor, and Dorothy looked at him, and Dorothy said, "This town has got to stop playing jokes on us every morning," because our nerves could not stand it. So Mons Brossard handed us his card, and he squealed, and he really waved his arm in the air quite a lot. So Dorothy said he gives quite a good imitation of the Moulin Rouge, which is really a red windmill. Only Dorothy said he makes more noise and he runs on his own wind. So we stood and watched him for quite a long time, but he seemed to get quite monotonous after quite a long while, because he was always talking in French, which really means nothing to us. So Dorothy said, "Let's see if 25 francs will stop him, because if 5 francs will stop a taxi driver, 25 francs ought to stop an advocate." Because he was making about 5 times as much noise as the taxi driver, and 5 times 5 is 25. So as soon as he heard us start in to talk about francs, he seemed to calm down quite a little. So Dorothy got out her pocketbook, and she gave him 25 francs. So then he stopped squealing, and he put it in his pocket, and then he got out quite a large-size handkerchief with purple elephants on it, and he started in to cry. So Dorothy really got discouraged, and she said, look here, you have given us quite an amusing morning, but if you keep that up much longer, wet or dry, out you go." So then he started into pointing at the telephone, and he seemed to want to use the telephone, and Dorothy said, "If you think you can get a number over that thing, go to it, but as far as we have found out, it is a wall bracket." So then he started in to telephone, so Dorothy and I went about our business to get dressed. So when he finished telephoning, he kept running to my door, and then he kept running to Dorothy's door, and he kept on crying and talking a lot, but he seemed to have lost all of his novelty to us, so we paid no more attention to him. So finally there was another loud knock on the door, so we heard him rush to the door, so we both went into the parlor to see what it was, and it really was a sight, because it was another Frenchman. So the new Frenchman rushed in, and he yelled, "Papa," and he kissed him. So it seems that it was his son, because his son is really his papa's partner in the advocate business. So then his papa talked quite a lot, and then he pointed at I and Dorothy. So then his son looked at us, and then his son let out quite a large-sized squeal, and he said in French, "Mais papa, elle est so charmant." So it seems he was telling his papa in French that we were really charming. So then Mons Brossard stopped crying and put on his glasses and took a good look at us. So then his son put up the window shade so his papa could get a better look at us. And when his papa had finished looking at us, he really became delighted. So he became all smiles, and he pinched our cheeks, and he kept saying charmant all of the time, because charmant means charming in the French language. So then his son broke out into English, and he really speaks English as good as an American. So then he told us his papa telephoned for him to come over, because we did not seem to understand what his papa was saying to us. So it seems that Mons Brossard had been talking to us in English all of the time, but we did not seem to understand his kind of English. So Dorothy said, "If what your papa was talking in was English, I could get a gold medal for my Greek." So then his son told his papa, and his papa laughed very, very loud, and he pinched Dorothy's cheek, and he was very delighted, even if the joke was on him. So then Dorothy and I asked his son what he was saying when he was talking to us in English, and his son said he was telling us all about his client, Lady Frances Beekman. So then we asked his son why his papa kept crying. So then his son said his papa kept crying because he was thinking about Lady Frances Beekman. So Dorothy said, "If he cries when he thinks about her, what does he do when he looks at her?" So then his son explained to his papa what Dorothy said. So then Mons Brossard laughed very, very loud. So then he kissed Dorothy's hand. So he said after that, we would all really have to have a bottle of champagne. So he went to the telephone and ordered a bottle of champagne. So then his son said to his papa, "Why do we not ask the charming ladies to go out to Fontainebleau today?" So his papa said it would be charming. So then I said, "How are we going to tell you gentlemen apart? Because if it is the same in Paris as it is in America, you would both seem to be Monsieur Brossard." So then we got the idea to call them by their first name. So it seems that his son's name is Louis. So Dorothy spoke up and said, "I hear that they number all of you Louis over here in Paris." Because a girl is always hearing someone talk about Louis the 16th, who seemed to be in the antique furniture business. I mean, I was surprised to hear Dorothy get so historical, so she may really be getting educated in spite of everything. But Dorothy told Louis he need not try to figure out his number, because she got it the minute she looked at him. So it seems his papa's name is Robert, which means Robert in French. So Dorothy started in to think about her 25 francs, and she said to Robert, "Your mother certainly knew her grammar when she called you that." So Dorothy said we might as well go out to Fontainebleau with Louis and Robert, if Louis would take off his yellow spats that were made out of yellow chamois skin with pink pearl buttons. Because Dorothy said, "Fun is fun, but no girl wants to laugh all of the time." So Louis is really always anxious to please, so he took off his spats. But when he took off his spats, we saw his socks. And when we saw his socks, we saw that they were Scotch plaid with small-size rainbows running through them. So Dorothy looked at them a little while, and she really became quite discouraged, and she said, "Well, Louis, I think you had better put your spats back on." So then Leon, our friend who is the waiter, came in with the bottle of champagne. So while he was opening the bottle of champagne, Louis and Robert talked together in French quite a lot, and I really think I had ought to find out what they said in French, because it might be about the diamond tiara, because French gentlemen are very, very gallant, but I really do not think a girl can trust one of them around a corner. So when I get a chance, I am going to ask Leon what they said. So then we went to Fontainebleau, and then we went to Montmartre, and we got home very late, and we really had quite a delightful day and night, even if we did not go out shopping and buy anything. But I really think we ought to do more shopping, because shopping really seems to be what Paris is principally for. May 1st. Well, this morning I sent for Leon, who is Dorothy and my waiter friend, and I asked him what Louis and Robert said in French. So it seems that they said in French that we seemed to attract them very, very much, because they really thought that we were very charming, and they had not met girls that were so charming in quite a long time. So it seems that they said they would ask us out a lot, and that they would charge up all the bills to Lady Frances Beekman, because they would watch for their chance, and they would steal the diamond tiara. So then they said that even if they could not steal it from us, we were really so charming that it would be delightful to go around with us, even if they could not steal from us. So no matter what happens, they really could not lose. Because it seems that Lady Frances Beekman would be glad to pay all the bills when they told her they had to take us out a lot so they could watch for their chance and steal it. Because Lady Frances Beekman is the kind of a wealthy lady that does not spend money on anything else, but she will always spend money on a lawsuit. And she really would not mind spending the money, because it seems that something either I or Dorothy said to Lady Frances Beekman seemed to make her angry. So then I decided it was time to do some thinking, and I really thought quite a lot. So I told Dorothy I thought I would put the real diamond tiara in the safe at the Ritz, and then I would buy an imitation of a diamond tiara at the jewelry store that has the imitations that are called paste. So then I would leave the imitation of the diamond tiara lying around so Louis and Robert could see how careless I seemed to be with it, so then they would get full of encouragement. So when we go out with Louis and Robert, I could put it in my handbag, and I could take it with me so Louis and Robert could always feel that the diamond tiara was within reach. So then Dorothy and I could get them to go shopping, and we could get them to spend quite a lot, and every time they seemed to get discouraged, I could open my handbag and let them get a glimpse of the imitation of a diamond tiara, and they would become more encouraged, and then they would spend some more money. Because I even might let them steal it at the last, because they were really charming gentlemen after all, and I really would like to help Louis and Robert. I mean, it would be quite amusing for them to steal it for Lady Frances Beekman, and she would have to pay them quite a lot. And then she would find out it was only made out of paste after all. Because Lady Frances Beekman has never seen the real diamond tiara, and the imitation of a diamond tiara would really deceive her. At least until Louis and Robert got all of their money for all of the hard work they did. I mean, the imitation of a diamond tiara would only cost about $65. And what is $65 if Dorothy and I could do some delightful shopping and get some delightful presents that would even seem more delightful when we stopped to realize that Lady Frances Beekman paid for them? And it would teach Lady Frances Beekman a lesson not to say what she said to two American girls like I and Dorothy, who were all alone in Paris and had no gentleman to protect them. So when I got through telling Dorothy what I thought up, Dorothy looked at me, and she really said she thought my brains were a miracle. I mean, she said my brains reminded her of a radio because you listen to it for days and days and you get discouraged. And just when you are getting ready to smash it, something comes out that is a masterpiece. So then Louis called us up, so Dorothy told him that we thought it would be delightful if he and Robert would take us out shopping tomorrow morning. So then Louis asked his papa, and his papa said they would. So then they asked us if we would like to go see a play called The Folies Bergère tonight. So he said that all of the French people who live in Paris are always delighted to have some Americans, so it will give them an excuse to go to the Folies Bergère. So we said we would go. So now Dorothy and I are going out shopping to buy the imitation of a diamond tiara, and we are going out window shopping to pick out where we would like Louis and Robert to take us shopping tomorrow. So I really think that everything always works out for the best, because after all, we really need some gentlemen to take us around until Mr. Eisman gets to Paris, and we could not go around with any really attractive gentlemen, because Mr. Eisman only wants me to go out with gentlemen that have brains. So I said to Dorothy that, even if Louis and Robert do not look so full of brains, we could tell Mr. Eisman that all we were learning from them was French. So even if I have not seemed to learn French yet, I have really almost learned to understand Robert's English, so when Robert talks in front of Mr. Eisman, and I seem to understand what he is saying, Mr. Eisman will probably think I know French. May 2nd. So last night we went to the Folies Bergère, and it really was divine. I mean, it was very, very artistic because it had girls in it that were in the nude. So one of the girls was a friend of Louis, and he said that she was a very, very nice girl, and that she was only 18 years of age. So Dorothy said, "She is slipping it over on you, Louis, because how could a girl get such dirty knees and only 18 years? So Louis and Robert really laughed very, very loud. I mean, Dorothy was very unrefined at the Folies Bergère, but I always think that when girls are in the nude, it is very artistic, and if you have artistic thoughts, you think it is beautiful, and I really would not laugh in an artistic place like the Folies Bergère. So I wore the imitation of a diamond tiara to the Folies Bergère. I mean, it really would deceive an expert, and Louis and Robert could hardly take their eyes off of it. But they did not really annoy me because I had it tied on very, very tight. I mean, it would be fatal if they got the diamond tiara before Dorothy and I took them shopping a lot. So we are all ready to go shopping this morning, and Robert was here bright and early, and he is in the parlor with Dorothy, and we are waiting for Louis. So I left the diamond tiara on the table in the parlor, so Robert could see how careless I really am with everything, but Dorothy is keeping her eye on Robert. So I just heard Louis come in, because I heard him kissing Robert. I mean, Louis is always kissing Robert, and Dorothy told Louis that if he did not stop kissing Robert, people would think that he painted batiks. So now I must join the others, and I will put the diamond tiara in my handbag so that Louis and Robert will feel that it is always around, and we will all go shopping. And I almost have to smile when I think of Lady Frances Beekman. May 3rd. Yesterday was really delightful. I mean, Louis and Robert bought Dorothy and I some delightful presents, but then they began to run out of all the francs they had with them, so they began to get discouraged. But just as soon as they began to get discouraged, I gave Robert my handbag to hold while I went to the fitting room to try on a blouse. So he was cheered up quite a lot. But of course Dorothy stayed with them and kept her eye on Robert, so he did not get a chance. But it really cheered him up quite a lot to even hold it. So after all their francs were gone, Robert said he would have to telephone to someone. So I suppose he telephoned to Lady Frances Beekman, and she must have said all right, because Robert left us at a place called the Café de la Paix, because he had to go on an errand. And when he came back from his errand, he seemed to have quite a lot more francs. So then they took us to luncheon, so after that luncheon we could go out shopping some more. But I am really learning quite a lot of French in spite of everything. I mean, if you want delicious chicken and peas for luncheon, all you have to say is petit pay and pulley. I mean, French is really very easy. For instance, the French use the word chic for everything, while we only seem to use it for gentlemen when they seem to resemble Rudolph Valentino. So while we were shopping in the afternoon, I saw Louis get Dorothy off in a corner and whispered to her quite a lot. So then I saw Robert get her off in a corner and whispered to her quite a lot. So when we got back to the Ritz, Dorothy told me why they whispered to her. So it seems when Louis whispered to Dorothy, Louis told Dorothy that if she would steal the diamond tiara from me and give it to him and not let his papa know, he would give her 1,000 francs. Because it seems that Lady Frances Beekman has got her heart set on it, and she will pay quite a lot for it because she is quite angry, and when she gets really as angry as she is only a woman with one idea. So if Louis could get it, and his papa would not find it out, he could keep all the money for himself. So it seems that later on, when Robert was whispering to Dorothy, he was making her the same proposition for 2,000 francs, so that Louis would not find out, and Robert could keep all the money for himself. So I really think it would be delightful if Dorothy could make some money for herself, because it might make Dorothy get some ambitions. So tomorrow morning, Dorothy is going to take the diamond tiara, and she is going to tell Louis that she stole it, and she is going to sell it to Louis. But she will make him hand over the money first, and then, just as she is going to hand over the diamond tiara, I am going to walk in on them and say, "Oh, there is my diamond tiara. I have been looking for it everywhere. So then I will get it back." So then she will tell him that she might just as well keep the 1,000 francs, because she will steal it for him again in the afternoon. So in the afternoon, she is going to sell it to Robert, and I really think we will let Robert keep it, because I am quite fond of Robert. I mean, he is quite a sweet old gentleman, and it is really refreshing the way he and his son love one another. Because even if it is unusual for an American to see a French gentleman always kissing his father, I really think it is refreshing, and I think that we Americans would be better off if we American fathers and sons would love one another more like Louis and Robert. So Dorothy and I have quite a lot of delightful handbags and stockings and handkerchiefs and scarves and things, and some quite cute models of evening gowns that are all covered with imitations of diamonds. Only they do not call them paste when they are on a dress, but they call them diamantes, and I really think a girl looks quite cute when she is covered all over with diamantes. May 5th. So yesterday morning, Dorothy sold the imitation of a diamond tiara to Louis, so then we got it back. So in the afternoon, we all went out to Versailles. Louis and Robert were quite delighted not to go shopping anymore, so I suppose that Lady Frances Beekman really thinks that there is a limit to almost everything. So I took Louis for a walk at Versailles so that Dorothy would have a chance to sell it to Robert. So then she sold it to Robert. So then he put it in his pocket. But when we were coming home, I got to thinking things over, and I really got to thinking that an imitation of a diamond tiara was quite a good thing to have after all. Especially if a girl does go around a lot in Paris with admirers who are of the French extraction. And after all, I really do not think a girl ought to encourage Robert to steal something from two American girls who are all alone in Paris and have no gentleman to protect them. So I asked Dorothy which pocket Robert put it in, so I sat next to him in the automobile coming home, and I took it out. So we were in quite a quaint restaurant for dinner when Robert put his hand in his pocket, and then he started to squeal once more. So it seems he had lost something, so he and Louis had one of their regular squealing and shoulder-shrugging matches. But Louis told his papa that he did not steal it out of his papa's pocket. But then Robert started to cry to think that his son would steal something out of his own papa's pocket. So after Dorothy and I had had about all we could stand, I told them all about it. I really felt sorry for Robert, so I told him not to cry anymore, because it was nothing but paste after all. So then I showed it to them. So then Louis and Robert looked at Dorothy and I, and they really held their breath. So I suppose that most of the girls in Paris do not have such brains as we American girls. So after it was all over, Louis and Robert seemed to be so depressed that I really felt sorry for them. So I got an idea. So I told them that we would all go out tomorrow to the imitation of a jewelry store, and they could buy another imitation of a diamond tiara to give to Lady Frances Beekman. And they could get the man in the jewelry store to put on the bill that it was a handbag, and they could charge the bill to Lady Frances Beekman along with the other expenses. Because Lady Frances Beekman had never seen the real diamond tiara anyway. So Dorothy spoke up, and Dorothy said that as far as Lady Frances Beekman would know about diamonds, you could nick off a piece of ice and give it to her, only it would melt. So then Robert looked at me, and he reached over and kissed me on the forehead in a way that was really full of reverence. So then we had quite a delightful evening. Because we all seemed to understand one another. Because after all, Dorothy and I could really have a platonic friendship with gentlemen like Louis and Robert. There seems to be something common between us, especially when we all get to thinking about Lady Frances Beekman. So they are going to charge Lady Frances Beekman quite a lot of money when they give her the imitation of a diamond tiara, and I told Robert, if she seems to complain, to ask her if she knew that Sir Francis Beekman sent me £10 worth of orchids every day while we were in London. So that would make her so angry that she would be glad to pay almost anything to get the diamond tiara. So when Lady Frances Beekman pays them all the money, Louis and Robert are going to give us a dinner in our honor at Syros. So when Mr. Eisman gets here on Saturday, Dorothy and I are going to make Mr. Eisman give Louis and Robert a dinner in their honor at Ciro's, because of all the way they helped us when we were two American girls all alone in Paris and could not even speak the French language. So Louis and Robert asked us to come to a party at their sister's house today,